welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm your co-host, Big Wos, aka Wos and Nando, joined as always by my brother on the west side of Los Angeles. Look at that tan. This man stayed with a tan, boy. That's Nando Vila. What's up, Nando?
It's good to be back, Wos. It's been a couple weeks.
Sir.
I haven't done the show. I missed 2 weeks ago. We were off last week, so it feels good to be back in the chair.
Snap,
back talking to you.
I forgot the last time we was on, we had DB on. Oh, my goodness. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a minute. Wow. So on today's show, we're going to switch up gears a little bit. As you guys know, we like to talk about world football on this show because Nando is a bona fide expert. I'm a newly enamored person, right? Like as a States guy, I was always on that soccer's for girls, blah, blah, blah nonsense.
Yeah.
And then I found religion in the beautiful game. I want to say 2014 World Cup is when I found religion. I was like, wow, I love this freaking game. And so we're going to have to talk about the monstrosity, the stupidity, the gall, the audacity, the greed. There's so many things involved with the Super League.
And the backlash, and we won. We took it down.
So freaking amazing. We're going to get into everything you need to know about the Super League, the Big Six, the Cronkies, the Red Sox group, the Henry, we're going to get into all of that. But first, of course, we got to talk about the Chauvin case, man. There's nothing to say. You guys all know the facts about this case. You all know the sort of mini revolution that was spawned by the footage of George Floyd's murder. That shit changed the world in a way that people were so freaking moved to hit the streets, to speak out, to just be like, wow, this can't stand. This is a singular, what's funny, Nando, is I guess it was 2 weeks ago now. I had my first Twitch stream with TYT. Shouts to TYT and the whole family over there. Be on the lookout for Woznia live on Twitch on Wednesday nights, y'all.
I'll be on later today. Well, I guess it's yesterday for the people listening to it.
Beautiful. And so, my first subject I did on there was like, I talked about the Chauvin case, but I wanted to talk about his police chief testifying against him in court. I was like, guys.
Remarkable.
I was like, guys, he's done. Stick a fork in him. This is not how things go down. The police chief is saying he violated the rules. This isn't our culture. This can't be our culture. It's disgusting morally and unprofessional. He buried him. The freaking chief of police. I don't even know how to even compare this in some other term. It's like, it's like a mafia boss actually snitching on one of his own lieutenants. It's like, wow.
Yeah, but they do that all the time because they have mafia bosses. That's the dirty little secret about the mafia is that they snitch all the time.
The cops don't snitch.
Police chiefs. Their power comes from their own force, so they can't leave anyone out to dry. Like if cops start feeling like the police chief's going to leave them out to dry, that dude's not going to be police chief for very long. So that's what's really remarkable about this. I mean, that's always been one of the roadblocks to this. I mean, my reaction to it was, I gotta say, when I heard that the jury was in deliberations, I was like, they're gonna find him innocent. I've just been that conditioned. I was like, it's gonna be fine. They're gonna find him innocent. And then I saw they found him guilty on all counts. And this is how like sad the reality is now, is that my initial thought was like, can you imagine what would happen if they found him innocent? Like,
we'd be doing this all over again.
Not just all over again, but worse, because it would be a exasperated, violent reaction, unlike we've seen here in this country basically ever, because we went through all that last summer and last year and if it had all amounted to nothing. Think about like the defeat and the feeling of powerlessness and the feeling of cynicism of like nothing we can do could ever make anything better. So I was just like incredibly relieved that we did see one small step of progress based after this just kind of unprecedented and historic uprising that you said. It's like a mini revolution in some ways. Like it really was the largest uprising probably in American history. And had that not had any effect on this discrete issue, right? Because it is just one case.
Obviously egregious fuck up. Like it's so obvious. Cause the whole thing is captured on camera. So it's so obvious how bad this is. For there have not to been nothing done would have been like, whoa. But again, the reason why I bring up, not to pat my own back to say I was right, although that's part of it, it's just that, bro, it kind of shows you how singular this George Floyd situation is. Like, there's no comparison. Like, nothing compares to this. There's never been this many people hitting the streets. There's never been something that freaking egregious where the guy had his knee on the guy's neck and was smirking the whole time on camera, on an HD camera.
Yeah.
You know, this is like, even Rodney King was fucked up, but Rodney King survived it. You know? I think if Rodney King would have died, I think it would have been a little bit different, but he survived it. So they're like, he just wouldn't listen. So whatever, they had all these things, but this was just like, yo, you screwed this up. And then again, once the cops lined up against it, I remember back when it happened, when I seen New York's police union admonish it. And if you know anything about New York's police union, New York City, NYPD, these guys they're the Gestapo, bro. They don't back down at all when it comes to cop shit. They take the union shit to the stratosphere. When I saw at the time New York condemned them, I was like, damn, this guy's in trouble, bro. This guy is in trouble. It's just it's unprecedented to see the cops align themselves against another cop. And not for, corruption. You know when they do the dirty money shit? Cops will align against them for that, for the PR sort of, we're not dirty, right? For the PR. It's basically they're protecting their own asses when they do that. But when a cop goes against a cop for just policing a Negro, that's unheard of, unprecedented. And the fact of the matter is, it wasn't a fellow officer. It wasn't it was the chief, the authority. I said, wow, they buried this guy. They threw him under the bus, but hey, it is what it is. And, people are going to ask where we go from here, Nando. It's hard for me to say that, come on, the young woman got killed just yesterday. 15-year-old young black woman got killed just yesterday, unarmed. Because these are the United States of America, I could see maybe marginal changes happening up there in Minnesota where they could try, where the thing actually happened. But you think NYPD is going to do their job any differently than they already do? That seems impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the what I would love to see is the issue of police brutality being, the lens of it being kind of expanded to include the broader issue of just inequality in this country. Because when the police force is meant to reinforce the status quo and the social hierarchy, and so if you change the social hierarchy, the policing will change with it. And I mean, that's at the end of the day, like that is the best solution to all of the problems facing anyone who's got the boot of capital on their neck, is to lift up the boot, to pass social democratic reforms that lift people out of poverty, that give people stable jobs, that give people protections and security, give people healthcare. All those things will go a long way to solving this problem. And I think when you focus it so narrowly on the policing issue, which is of course, a crisis, not a crisis, but like a moral kind of abomination, like that the United States like over polices its people dramatically, like compared to any other country, even like the bad countries. Even the bad countries, like the cops in China are not like this. They're just not. China's one of the bad countries, you know? They're not like this. I live there. They're not as violent as this. It's just not like that. So it's if we expand it to include, like, we have to fund basic services for people can live decent lives, and that will go a long way to changing the fabric of this country. We need to expand the net of our understanding. Obviously, the tip of the spear is police violence, because that is the most naked, the most naked, invisible manifestation of the morally abhorrent and unjust system that we live in, which keeps people down. But what we need to do is transform this system, and we need to do it together. Like that's the only way to do it. If not, the cops are just going to keep killing people. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Couldn't have said it any better myself. Obviously, I'm satisfied by the verdict. That goes without saying. I'm not going to do a victory lap, because I just think there's so much more to be solved here. And, you know, we'll be getting into that in the later weeks. Rest in peace to George Floyd. Your life actually meant something. So we move on, man. Awkwardly, though, we transition, but we do anyway, to the Super League, the European Super League. Now, Nando, you know, my basic understanding here is the biggest teams in Europe feel like they share in the profits that they are most responsible for generating with teams in the Champions League, and even Premier League. They feel like that, which, you know, is funny. And they decided they wanted to start their own league and usurp the Champions League altogether. And that own league would eventually relegate stuff like Premier League and the French League and, you know, Serie A and La Liga.
It would destroy them,
render them useless. And they did their little announcement, and they got destroyed.
And they all backed down within 48 hours. It was crazy. I guess I was thinking about this, like the way to frame it to someone who's not a huge soccer fan, or even maybe just a casual fan like yourself. I mean, the only American comp that I could think of would be as if think of college
that's
football,
the only one.
Yep. There's the conferences, you know, like, and there's something to that, right? There's some, you know, there's regional by, like, you know, conglomerations, and there's some history to them, like the SEC, the ACC, the Big East, the Big Ten, the Pac-10, etc. But like at some point, you know, you can imagine where Alabama and
FSU,
USC, UT, the big schools were just like, why are we in these conferences playing
with
all these
Vanderbilt
games
in them?
Vanderbilt and you know, Temple and whatever. And so they're like, you know, if we played each other every week, instead of, like, you know, us playing some little smaller school, we can make a lot more money. And that is true. That is 100% true. If every single game was USC,
Ohio State, Michigan,
and Michigan,
it'd be amazing.
You know, Miami and whatever, you know, like the big,
it would be great, actually.
Yeah. And, but it would destroy the football programs of basically every other school, because they in part survive on the shared experience of being in the same conference with these bigger schools, right? There would be no interest at all in a game, you know, between you know, in these kind of other conferences. So they would essentially doing is like taking their ball and going home. The big teams taking the ball. So that's what they try to do in the European Super League. It's an idea that's been kind of floating around for a long time. And it was kind of one of those things that no one ever really thought they were ever going to actually go there. I guess they thought it was. People would always say it's inevitable. But like when it actually happened, everyone was like faced with the fact that, man, the sport that we knew and that we fell in love with is over, and they're going to do something new. And it's being done hastily, and it's being done in this kind of haphazard way. And they they hadn't really thought everything through. Like, it was going to create all kinds of weird incentives. Like, I mean, I think we were going to get into a situation kind of like is happening in baseball and to some extent the NBA, in which there's so many meaningless games, and there's so many kind of games. There's kind of an incentive for teams to tank. I mean, this happens a lot in baseball. Like, I'm from Miami. I know this from the Florida Marlins. Like, the Florida Marlins made a decision at one point where they were like, we're going to get a shit ton of money from these TV deals no matter what. Why would we spend any money on players? Why would we put out
baseball's rules are such that you can keep young players under cheap deals forever. And when they want their new deals, bye. We start the cycle all over again. We suck forever. We get a bunch of extremely talented young guys, pay them nothing for it, win, win, win. And then when they want to go, and then we keep doing it. We never have to actually pay anybody. And baseball figured that out a long time ago. And you know, what I wanted to talk to you about too, Nando, that I think is really at the root of this. I remember having a conversation with my man, Sam Esfandiari. He's big NBA Twitter head. He's a beast. And I was talking about, people got to stop bitching about players leaving their teams. Like, who cares? European soccer is the most powerful shit in the world. Their players are constantly moving, constantly leaving. Nobody cares because they love the sport. They love the team. And then Sam explained to me, he's like, bro, you can't compare the Charlotte Hornets to Southampton.
No.
The traditions are so freaking rooted. It's insane. It's these teams are literally part of the community.
So this is at its heart a story about two forces. One of them is globalization, and the other one is capitalism. And the Americans, the ruling class in America figured out a long time ago that we just need to turn these teams into brands, and we need to uproot them from the communities and things like that. I mean, like Bernie's book, like half of the first section of his book is him ranting about how pissed off he was when the Brooklyn Dodgers left Brooklyn and went to LA. You know, I think like that to a European is so unthinkable. Like, teams just move. Like, what are you talking about? Like, are you fucking crazy? Are you fucking crazy? But Americans figured out a long time ago. It's like, who gives a shit about the people who support the team in fucking Brooklyn? I don't give a shit about these people. Like, they're just numbers on a ledger. Yeah. They're just numbers on a ledger. There's no difference between these people and the other. But European teams never did that. Never did that kind of traumatic thing in the 50s and 60s or whatever, when the franchise thing started in the United States. And these teams really are rooted in these local communities. And in fact, they sell that as part of their appeal. Like, how many fucking "You'll Never Walk Alone" tattoos have you seen in LA? You know, because like Liverpool sells the passion of Anfield and the Cop, you know, like their supporter section.
And the whole, they do their whole working class shit. They do the
That's
whole
part of the whole appeal.
Yeah.
They're not just some fucking brand, you know, it's something more than that. But they want, like, the logic of capitalism is antithetical to local communities and supporter bonds and the sort of emotional ties that people have, these things. The logic of capitalism is to turn people into consumers, is to commodify everything. Like, we've seen it with our fucking relationships, you know, like we're now, you know, through the presence of, like, you know, apps that make money off of our desire to get laid, essentially. So they commodify everything and turn it into a product and turn you into a consumer. And that's what this was about. This was about, these are just now global brands. They're supporters for Madrid and Barcelona and Manchester United and Milan all over the world. And so it doesn't matter that they play in these local leagues. In fact, it is a hindrance to that, right? It is a hindrance to that. I was convinced that when the Super League was announced, I was feeling incredibly bleak about it on Monday. I was like, I'm going to lose interest in this sport. Like, I'm going to lose interest. Like, there's no way I'm going to continue. I was ready. Like, I was feeling really bleak.
And apparently, Nando, a lot of people felt like that. Like, you're ruining this thing that we like, completely ruining it for what? For money.
For money. And so I was convinced that they were going to, like, create into franchises and they were going to start moving teams around. Like, you know, it doesn't make sense to have 4 teams in London. Let's move Tottenham to Singapore. You know, why wouldn't we? You know, like why wouldn't we? And the thing is, these teams which have these unbelievable local roots, right? They have these incredibly strong local roots, and like I said, is part of their appeal. It's part of why they are appealing to a mass audience. They've been taken over on the one hand by oligarchic interests in Russia and in the Gulf, but on the other hand, good old-fashioned American capitalists.
Yep.
Like the Glazers and Manchester United, probably the most famous case. But now Liverpool is owned by Americans. Arsenal is owned by Americans. Tottenham is owned by Americans. Roma is owned by Americans. AC Milan is owned by Americans. And Americans, they like they like to govern their sports in the way Americans do it, which is we control everything.
Yeah.
These are brands. We move teams around whenever the fuck we want. And
also,
we crucially want to ensure that we're in the league every year.
That's what I was just about to say. This freaking the funny thing about the Big Six, specifically in the Premier League, is that the Premier League only sends 4 teams to the Champions League every single year. So inevitably, 2 of the Big Six are left out every year. And the oligarchs who own those teams are like, hold on, I can't
what the fuck?
I can't count on the Champions League shortfall every year? No, that's bullshit.
So when the Glazers bought Manchester United, which they did it, by the way, in something called a leverage buyout, which is something that should be illegal. Mm-hmm. It's basically they take out a loan to buy the team, and then they transfer the debt away from themselves to the team. So now the team has the debt, but they're the owners. And it's like, what?
Yeah,
capitalism. How did that happen?
It's a sham.
And the Glazers, who obviously own the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, congratulations to them on just winning the Super Bowl. They're like, we're in the NFL every year. Like, I mean, there's no shot. Like, in the Champions League, which is the biggest deal, like they looked at Manchester United. We qualify every year. Then they bought the team, and all of a sudden they don't qualify every year. Like, Manchester United has not qualified for the Champions
ever
League
since Alex Ferguson retired.
Exactly. So they're like, wait, what the fuck? You telling me like I paid? Well, I took out a loan to pay all this shit, but I don't get to be in the fucking Champions League every year? Are you insane? That's fucking crazy. So,
by the way, these ultra capitalistic, quote unquote, competitive motherfuckers, where's your competitive spirit? How come you don't make the Champions League every year? You should take it as a personal freaking failing of yours that you don't make the damn Champions League, brother. Why's your team so trash that you don't get to make it and get that bread? They don't think that way. They fix the fight instead. They know they can't win the fight fair and square, so they fix it. That's just good old capitalism in a nutshell.
And there's so many funny details. There's so many incredible details. I'll just give you one detail, right? And it's not to say that the status quo of soccer is any good, and soccer has very deep basic problems that need to be reformed. Yeah, and UEFA, which is the governing body of European soccer, is like a corrupt organization, and they're evil, and that's true. But the head of UEFA is a guy named Alexander Seferin. He's a Swiss guy. One of the leaders of this Super League movement was a guy named Andrea Agnelli, who's the son of the Agnelli Titan, the owner of Fiat, Ferrari, and crucially Juventus. And so for the last couple of years, the European clubs, who are represented in a group called the European Club Association or something like that, the ECA, of which Agnelli is kind of the point person to negotiate the new format of the Champions League with Agnelli. He's been negotiating personally with Seferin for the last couple of years on the new format of the Champions League. Seferin is godfather to Agnelli's daughter. They are close, these people. Seferin is telling Agnelli, okay, we're going to do the new Champions League, whatever, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, totally fine. These are the terms, whatever, blah, blah. And then like, this is like, they reach an agreement on the new Champions League on Thursday. Okay. Wow. On Saturday, the Super League, all the clips start calling each other, yo, the Super League, we got to do it. They all sign up in one day on Saturday. Wow. And then Agnelli starts hearing, Seferin, the head of UEFA, starts hearing rumors. Like, what the fuck? Like, I'm hearing this is happening. And Agnelli tells him, no, don't worry. Nothing to worry about. Agnelli's like, okay. Sunday morning, he's like, let's put out a press release announcing the new deal for the Champions League, whatever. And that way we put all these rumors to bed. And then he's like, yeah, let's do that. Call me back in 1 hour. And Severin's like, okay, great. Like, he's feeling okay. Like, we're going to put this to rest. We're going to announce this shit. Agnelli turns off his phone and is all of a sudden ghosts the head of UEFA, who's fucking calling him like over and over again. And then just the Super League is announced. Fucking stabbed him in the back. Godfather to his daughter. Is incredible.
So Liverpool's coach had to come out and speak. Klopp, who obviously, you know, Nando, I have it on personal authority from Nando. He's the second best coach in the Premier League, y'all. Number 2. We know who's number 1. We don't even have to say his name. He has to come.
It's like 1 in 1A. It's like 1 in 1A.
Okay, we'll give you 1 in 1A. We'll give you that. We'll give the Liverpool contingent that. He has to come out, and this is a guy who has been very pro-public worker union.
Yeah.
He's basically a commie. Klopp is a commie. And he said part of the appeal of coaching this damn team was, you know, coaching a team that appealed to that actually is about that. That's part of the brand. You know, he said that in the past, and now he has to come out, and he doesn't want to diss his bosses, but he's like, come on, y'all. Y'all know I'm not about this. You know I'm not about this.
No, it's worth like reemphasizing, like, you know, especially in England, but generally speaking across Europe, but it's especially true in England. Football was always seen as the working class sport. The ruling class sport was rugby. Okay, like fancy lads in the UK play rugby. The plebes play sport. The hooligans, like all that shit, like all that shit was basically propaganda. I mean, there's an element of truth to it, but it's essentially propaganda to like as part of like Thatcher's war on the poor in the UK. The whole like, look at these barbarians.
Got you.
Stadiums, you know, like football was seen as the people's sport. The icky, unruly masses, the aristocrats. I mean, the real aristocrats do fucking like horseback riding and fox hunting and shit. But the upper classes played rugby, generally speaking. All right, obviously it's not like, you know, but and Liverpool specifically, the club of Liverpool, which is, you know, a major port city, was always like a major European port city, was the dock workers club. Like, it was the dock workers union club. And in the mid 90s, for example, like the dock workers went on strike, and it was one of the last big major kind of work stoppages that happened in the UK after Thatcher and in the height of Tony Blairism. And it was like this big controversial thing. The Liverpool dock workers went on strike, and Robbie Fowler, the center forward for Liverpool, their captain, their best player, scores a goal in the middle of this, takes off his shirt, and he's got a message supporting the dock workers. Like, that's what Liverpool is about, you know? Like, that's what they are about. And they were these fucking American owners who don't know shit. They don't know dick about any of this shit. The American fucking dumbasses. They're just like capitalist pigs who just want fucking more and more profit. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, move this team to Singapore.
We paid billions for this. Like, we're gonna do whatever we want. We're gonna not do this for some dock workers. Like, no, that's not how things work where I'm from, brother man. But yeah, the collective will of European soccer fans, and their love for the status quo of the way things are, or just the idea that like they formed their Super League. Each team now has about $300 million more to play with. Yeah. So even just functionally, even if they stay in their local leagues, like the money is already so crazy. This will make it even more so. Like what are y'all talking about?
And not just that, but it was going to destroy the local leagues. I mean, I was going to give the local leagues at best 5 years.
Wow.
At best 5 years, because at the root of it was they were going to want to play on the weekends. You know, like the initial proposal was like, okay, we'll do the local leagues on the weekends and the Super League during the weekdays. But the weekends is where all the ratings are for sports. You know, so they were eventually gonna eye those time slots, and what was gonna happen was that the big teams in the Super League, you know, because they're always in the Super League, because there's no threat of them leaving the Super League. There was no if they came in last place in the Super League
like a preseason game. They could
of
just
course
play
like
a
double-A farm team.
Yeah,
you know, like
it.
we'll play the kids. You know, we'll use it as a feeder system for the Super League. It was going to destroy the local leagues, because the local leagues, in a way, depend on those massive rivalries and the history and all that stuff. Like, You know, it was gonna. They were
And
gonna
also
essentially
the
be
fact
relegated
that you
to
have
like.
to win your local league makes it matter. That this
Of
is
course.
the barrier of entry to the Champions League makes it matter. You know, so wow, so amazing, just so amazing.
But it all collapsed in record time. It was amazing. I mean, really, this was driven by the fan backlash in Europe, but especially in England, because in England they really they have a much stronger kind of local league culture. They really kind of foment the domestic competitions at all levels. Like it's like a big part of their social fabric, even bigger than in other places. And they were like just absolutely like, no, like this cannot happen. This cannot happen. And the backlash was so swift and crucially caught these people off guard. They did not expect it. Like I could have seen this coming a mile away. I was like, when they fucking announced this thing, they're gonna be riots on the streets, and these people had no idea. Why? Because they're Russians, Americans, and Emiratis who don't fucking know anything about the sport that they're overseeing. They don't know anything about it, you know, and they don't know anything about the people who fucking live and die by the sport every single day.
This is so cool.
So it was cool. It's cool to see like an uprising have such quick effect. I mean, the whole thing came crumbling down so quickly.
Bro, they lined up a $6 billion loan from JP Morgan. That was another, like, JP Morgan was like, we know your TV deal is going to be so ridiculous. Here.
Yeah, of course.
You guys.
No.
You guys.
It makes financial sense for the big clubs.
Of course.
It does. But it was going to, I think, I mean, so European basketball did a Super League. And they have a Super League called the Euro League. And it's been an absolute goddamn disaster because they created all these weird incentives. So in America, we're very used to the playoff structure, right? League, and then playoffs. The problem with that, as we see basically in baseball and in the NBA, NFL's a little different because there's so few games that every game
it
is kind of
dilutes the regular season.
Dude, the NBA regular season, who gives a shit?
No,
man?
it's
like,
tough. At 82 games, it's insane. If they did it,
82 games and 8 teams per conference make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like
if they
there's no stakes.
If they limited the NBA games to like this 30 teams, basically make it 50 games. You know, some people only play once, and everybody in my conference I play twice, and keep it pushing. It'd be perfect. People be like, oh shit, I'm only gonna see Steph and LeBron one time before the playoffs. I gotta watch that. Now it's like we don't even know what days the games are. It's ridiculous. They've definitely relegated it to, you know, a non-entity.
But it's essentially like a glorified preseason in a way.
Yep.
I mean, especially with so many teams in the playoffs.
Yep.
You know, like teams below 500 make the playoffs all the time.
Yep.
Like in soccer, the league structure without a playoff, every game is do or die because every game counts towards the title race.
Yes.
So you're not just competing against the team in front of you, you're competing against the people near you on the table. So every game's like, 3 points. You know, every game has stakes to the bitter end, you know, like that's the beauty of the league format. Obviously you can do hybrid things. That's why they have, you know, parallel tournaments, and the Champions League works well as a tournament. But the league format ensures that week in and week out, from the day one in the season, a loss sucks. You know, like if you lose your opening day in NBA, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, whatever. It's not that big of a deal.
It's not
you know?
a deal.
Like I remember when the Heat got LeBron, Bosch, and LeBron and Bosch with Wade. Did they lose like their first 9 of their first 12 games or something?
They started off very slow. It wasn't 9. They were 9-8.
They were 9-8,
which is a disaster for a team that was looked at as going to win 70.
Who cares? Yeah, you know, like
exactly.
So, the Super League it came and went. The rise and fall. Less than 60 hours it lasted, and it was.
By the way, why is Arsenal considered one of the big six? Can somebody explain that to me?
Arsenal are a team that were kind of in the right place at the right time when the Premier League and European soccer went global, which is kind of in the late 90s, early 2000s. The satellite revolution kind of really beamed European soccer around the world.
Gotcha.
And they were good then.
Okay.
They just happened to be good then. They're not sort of as historically significant in England as Manchester United, but especially Liverpool. Liverpool, Manchester United are the sort of big teams traditionally in England. The guys who like in the sort of upper middle class who are seen now as global clubs just happen to be really good when
the game
that
globalized, right? So when the game globalized, they happened to be good at that time. So they grew a global sort of fandom at the time.
And I want to make a point about globalization because I said it before, but the arguments that you saw in favor of the Super League were the exact same arguments that people who defended economic globalization and things like NAFTA and free trade agreements were using, where it's like, like when people were like, the NAFTA is going to destroy the livelihood of like, workers in America, like the fucking GM workers in Detroit are going to be destroyed. He's like, oh yeah, but like it's going to lift people in China out of poverty. Don't you give a shit about people in China? And it's like that's the wrong way to look at it. Like there should be kind of everyone should rise up, not like one expects the other. So what happened with soccer, with the globalization of the European game especially, is that it destroyed local leagues, especially in South America, and it prevented local leagues in Africa and Asia from ever really becoming meaningful, right? Soccer in South America is a big deal. Obviously, Brazil has 5 World Cups. Argentina has 2 World Cups. Uruguay has 2 World Cups. It's a huge deal, and the local leagues were a big deal. Like, those teams were great. They had great players. They competed. They were fucking amazing. When the globalization of soccer happened, it destroyed those local leagues because all those players just went where the money was. So, like, all these South American leagues are essentially now feeder leagues for Europe. So it destroyed those local leagues, and it prevented a league in Indonesia or China or Japan even from ever really becoming a force, because as soon as a player gets okay, they go to Europe, because that's where the money is, instead of letting all those leagues all rise up together and everyone gets money.
Yeah, and
so this was just furthering of that process. And the
capitalists are like, look, the people who show up to Watford every freaking weekend, they're nowhere like that. That tens of thousands of people can't just by definition be as important as the millions who are going to watch in places like St. Louis in Japan. But they were wrong.
Well, I mean, you're seeing it a little bit with the NBA again. Like you said, the Charlotte Hornets is like, it's not the same relationship to Charlotte that say a Liverpool has to people in Liverpool. But like, I mean, we saw it with all the controversies and stuff. But like, the NBA has to care about their fans in China probably more than the fans.
100%. A part of it is like this. This is a population that's seen as growing. Like it's these are tough questions these cats have to answer, but. Man, soccer, football, whatever you want to call it, the beautiful game, whatever the fuck you want to call it, my lord, this was just sweet justice. Yeah. Loved it. All right, that's our episode for today, guys. We'll see you guys next week. Fernando and Rob, I'm out of here. Peace.